Hey, this is Buzz, and this is episode number 5. Radio Tells. A UFO, a blind bear, and the FCC. It's all coming up next on AirWaves. Welcome back to episode number 5 of AirWaves. I'm Buzz Stone. And if you saw my first meet and greet video, you know that I was in radio broadcasting for many years, over 20 years. I think 17 of those years was as a top 40 disc jockey on radio stations all across the U.S. And so in my travels, I met a lot of people, experienced a lot of things, and I've got a few radio tales to tell you about today. And I call it the UFO, the Blind Bear, and the FCC. So starting out, the UFO. Back in 1978, I was working at an AM Top 40 station. It was actually my first full-time radio job. And I was hired to be the music director and the 7 to midnight DJ. And we had a really good crew at this radio station. It was very successful. But we also had some very interesting people working at the station. And as I told you, I worked the 7 to midnight shift. Well, at midnight, another DJ would come on to take my place, and he worked from midnight to 6 a.m. His name was Jay. I'm not going to give anybody's full name to protect the guilty and the innocent. But anyway, this one night I'd gotten off at midnight and drove home. I lived about 7 miles from the station outside of town in the country. And got home, it's midnight, took a shower and just went to bed. Well, I think it was about 1:30 in the morning, I get this phone call from the station, and it's Jay, the guy that relieved me at midnight, and he's just in a total panic. And he's saying, "Buzz, man, you got to come on down to the station." He says, "There's something strange going on." I said, What? I mean, he sounded really panicked. He says, "You're not going to believe this, man." He says, "But I was on the air doing my show, and all of a sudden the signal just went dead. There was no signal anymore." He said, "So I walked outside, out behind the station, and that's where we had our broadcasting tower. It was in a field right behind the radio station, not that far, maybe 100 feet from the building. And he says, there's a UFO hovering over the tower." And I said, "Y'all, you've got to be kidding me. Come on." He says, "No, man, I'm serious. Get down here as quick as you can." I said, okay, I'm coming, So I hang up the phone, I jump up, get dressed, get in my car, and start driving towards the station. Like I said, I lived about 7 miles outside of town, so it took me a little while. I was driving towards the station, and all of a sudden, on the horizon, I see something flying low and slow, coming right towards me, and it's lit up like a Christmas tree. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I'm actually going to see a real UFO. I never, I always thought it was possible there were aliens, but I never knew for sure. And I'm a person that keeps my eye on the skies anyway. I'm interested in astronomy and all that, and space travel. And so anyway, I'm seeing this thing coming towards me, and I'm thinking, I'm getting excited, really. And as I get closer, it's starting to look really, really weird. Finally, I get close enough I can make out what it is. Now, keep in mind, this is after 1:30 in the morning, okay? It's an airplane, and across the bottom, just a single engine airplane, and across the bottom of the wings, he's got this electronic billboard that's flashing a message. I think it was something like "rent this space" or something, And he's flying really low. He flies right over me, so I get a good look at it. And I'm thinking, what's this guy doing flying around at 1:30 in the morning, with this advertising? But anyway, so I think, okay, well, this must be what Jay saw, at the station. So, but when I forgot to tell you, when I get in the car, I turned on the station, there's dead air, there's no signal. I'm about maybe 2 miles out from the station, and all of a sudden the station pops back on the air. I can hear it. So I drive on in, pull into the parking lot, go into the building, and there's Jay standing in the lobby of the station to greet me. And he's got a cold sweat, man. I mean, there's this sweat blowing off his forehead. and just, you could tell, I mean, he was scared, genuinely scared. And I said, what's going on? You know, I said, I saw this airplane coming in. I had the sign on. I said, oh, what you saw? He goes, no, man. He says, I swear to God, he says, I ran out back, you know, to take a look at the tower and see if there was something going on there because I couldn't figure out why we were off the air. He says, and I look up, and he says, there's this triangular-shaped spacecraft hovering directly above the tower. He said it looked, like I say, it was a triangular. He said it was like a grayish color, and it had a blue, like neon light all the way around the perimeter of the craft. And he said it just hovered over there. He says the whole time it's hovering over the tower, there's no signal. You know, the station's not getting out. And he said eventually, he said it left, and when it left, the station came back on the air. And I'm saying, okay, Jay, you know, if memory serves me correctly, I think Jay liked his weed, so I thought, you know, I kind of chalked it up to that. But there's no doubt that he genuinely thought that he saw this giant UFO hovering over the tower. Okay, so great story. Thought you'd really appreciate hearing that. So that's the UFO of the story. The next part of the story is, all three of these, by the way, from the same radio station, is the Blind Bear. As I told you, I did a 7 to midnight shift. Well, we have what we call middays. And I believe at the station it was from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And we had a guy on the air, and again, I won't give his real name or his name that he used, except that he called himself the Bear, okay? And with good reason. He was a big guy. He was probably like 6'4", I don't know, 250 pounds, big guy. But the thing that was unusual about the Bear was that he was legally blind. Now, you can imagine trying to run a radio show. You know, you got all these controls everywhere, and you got to stay on top of it. You know, back then we were playing 45 records on turntables, you know. So you're sitting there queuing up records, you know, every 3 minutes and having to get your commercials together and play those. And you had to read what we call liners. You know, they were things we'd read throughout the hour to promote the station or events that we're doing. And we also had to read public service announcements and weather forecasts and all this kind of stuff. Well, the Bear, he was legally blind, but he could see somewhat, you know, and what he would do is he would go and copy all the things that he was going to have to read, like our liner sheet and public service announcements and all that. He would copy it, and he would take it home, and his wife would rewrite everything on these large 5x7 index cards. And the Bear, he had a magnifying glass, okay? So it was quite a thing to watch him run his show, but every time he had to read something, he had this big magnifying glass and everything written in big block letters on these cards, and that's how he did his show. Well, one day, I was standing out in the lobby of the radio station talking to the program director, whose name was Ron, and the lobby was right in the middle at the front of the radio station. You know, when you first come in, that's where you would walk into. And in the back of the radio station was the transmitter room where we kept the transmitters for the station. So one day, Ron and I were standing in the lobby, we're talking, and in walks the Bear. The Bear walks right up to Ron and looks at him and says, "Have you seen Ron? I can't find him anywhere." And Ron is kind of taken aback, you know, and he doesn't want to embarrass the Bear. So he changes his voice and he says, "Yeah, I saw him in the back in the transmitter room." And the Bear says, "Oh, okay, thanks," and turns around. Well, Ron runs out the front door all the way around the back of the building and comes back into the transmitter room just in time for the Bear to walk in and say, "Ron, you back here?" And yeah, I'm over here, Bear. So another a funny story from back in 1978. And finally, this one I like because this one involves me. I think it's a pretty funny story. This is the FCC. And for those of you who don't know what the FCC is, that's the Federal Communications Commission. Now, they're tasked with regulating the broadcast industry along with basically any kind of radio communications and television in the United States, okay? And especially back then, they were kind of a feared entity because they could shut you down if they wanted to. And there's all kinds of regulations that radio stations have to follow. Well, one of them is, I told you this was an AM station. It was on 1450 AM. And we were 1,000 watts daytime and 250 watts at night. Well, I was working the 7 to midnight shift, so it was my responsibility to reduce power at sunset. And of course that would change throughout the year as sunset changed. And so when it was sunset, I would have to go back to the transmitter and lower the power from 1,000 watts to 250 watts. And we had these transmitter logs that we had to write down. We had to take meter readings every 3 hours to make sure we were on frequency and everything was kosher. And I also had to write down what time I reduced power, right? Well, this one night, I got preoccupied and forgot about the power reduction. And I was like 15 minutes late. I finally remembered it. So I think it was supposed to be 7:15. We were supposed to reduce power, and I reduced it. It was like 7:25 or something. Okay, well, so I went back and did it, and I thought, no foul, no harm. Well, maybe 10 minutes later, the telephone rings, and the business phone. So I answer it, and there's this guy on the other end. He's telling me he works for the FCC. He's a field agent, and he's just in the area checking things out. And he said I could really help him out if I could just answer, a few short questions for him and save him the trip of having to come by the radio station. So I said, well, yeah, sure, whatever. And he asked me a few innocuous questions. I can't remember what they are. But the final question is, what time did you reduce power tonight? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, did this guy hear me? Have I been caught? And so what I said, I didn't give him an exact time. I said at sundown. He goes, oh, at sundown, huh? And I said, yeah. He says, okay, all right. He says, well, I really appreciate you doing this. You've saved me a lot of trouble and everything, and yeah. So we hang up, Well, the next day, I go to the general manager, who also did a morning show along with the program director, Ron. We'll call the GM, we'll call him Eddie, okay? So I go to Eddie and I said, Eddie, I got this call last night from this guy saying he was with the FCC. He goes, really? And I said, yeah. He said, what did he want? And I said, well, he asked me, these questions and everything. He said, well, did you tell him what he wanted to hear? And I said, yeah. And he said, everything was okay? I said, yeah, I think so. I don't see any problem. He said, well, you did the right thing. That's good. That's good. So I said, okay, and I'd forgotten about it, didn't think anything about it. Well, it was maybe a week later, the general manager, Eddie, he had a cookout for the staff at his house. And I went to his house, and in the kitchen he had, back in the day we had the dial telephone, the rotary dial telephones, and he had one hanging on the wall there in the kitchen. And I went in to make a phone call. And as I'm making the phone call, he had a notepad stuck on the wall there next to the telephone. And on this notepad, I see the list of questions that the guy that was supposedly from the FCC, had called and asked me. So I was like, aha. Eddie was listening that night and realized I didn't reduce power, at the time I was supposed to. And I said, okay, two people can play this game, right? So that was, I think on a Sunday, we had that cookout. And then the following Monday, I guess it was probably a Tuesday, because we went back to work. I worked that Monday night shift. The next morning, when he came into work on Tuesday morning, I said, Eddie, I said, that guy from the FCC called back again. And he's like, what? He did? I said, yeah. I said, what did he want? I said, I don't know. I said, he started asking me a bunch of questions, and I thought, this is somebody that's got to be pulling my leg. So I said, I told him to jump up my butt. And Ed's like, you did what? No, tell me you didn't do that. And I said, yeah. I said, it had to be, it just had to be a joke, And he's like, oh man. He says, no, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have done that. And so I just looked at him and I said, "Gotcha." And then I told him how I'd seen the note next to his telephone and everything, and he had to confess, you know, and it was a pretty funny story, and we both ended up getting a good laugh out of it. But just some radio tales I thought you would enjoy, give you an idea of some of the shenanigans that go on in the broadcasting business. And as I said in my initial meet and greet videos, as I do more videos, I'll be doing more of these stories interspersed with whatever it is I'm talking about, if I think it you know, fits in with that subject. So stay tuned to Airwaves, and if you would, I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, like this video, and share it with your friends, and we'll see you down the dial.